Alright, what's going on, guys? I wanted to show you real quick, just a quick custom that a lot of people have done. I'm basically taking this Wolf Gray 3 and blacking out all of the gray upper. Just wanted to walk through how to do that. The things you're going to need are right here. You can get all these from Turtle Feathers. Just some regular masking tape, the jet black leather dye, the prepper and the glazer. You can also use acetone. When you're doing uppers, it doesn't matter. When you're doing the midsoles, you really want to use the prepper and the glazer and not acetone. Also, the midsole magic will be out hopefully in a week. I'm waiting on the distributor to get the bottles and the labels to me, so that's pending. I know I've been saying it's coming soon, but I'm working as hard as I can to get that out. And then you're also going to need a brush to put the black leather dye on. And then, of course, cotton balls and Q-tips for the prepper and the glazer. So you can see I've already started right here. And all you want to do for this area when you're prepping and painting, you don't want to get anything on here, and you don't want to get any leather prepper and glazer on the midsole because it can remove it. So I'm just taping up these sides right here. So I just use my regular masking tape. Okay, so now you see both shoes are taped up and done, or prepped, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and get into removing the old finish and paint. With that, we'll need a bunch of cotton balls, and we're going to need some Q-tips. And a little trick I like to do is take the cotton ball and place it on top like that, and get a lot in there, and then you can squeeze out the excess into that cap and use that excess for your Q-tips to dip in. Alright, and then you just prep as normal and start rubbing on the leather. You can see it lighten up a little bit, but there's not much coming off on here. I've never prepped this shoe before. I'm assuming it won't come white. I think this paint is pretty much the color of the leather that they used. So and you can rub pretty hard too. That's the point. You want to get as much off as you can. Again, I would prefer using gloves. I don't because I'm an idiot. But use gloves to be safe. I've done this a ton of times where I'd be using way too many gloves. I'd have gloves on for most of the day and I'd rather not. Probably not the best choice, but it's my choice. Alright, now you can see I've taken off the tape on one spot. No blemishes or problems where we taped, and this has all been prepped. Take off the second one here. Again, you can see no problems there. Everything's all good. Cool. Alright, so now the next step, which is probably the hardest, if there is a hard part of this, I will say, is the dye. So we'll shake that up. Obviously I haven't used this in a while, it's a little crusty. Go ahead and just pour some into that cap. And to be honest, there really is no secret to this, of keeping a steady hand. At some point you just, got to be good with a brush. So we're going to go ahead and start filling all this gray in with a coat of black leather dye. And after that, we will let it sit, and then we will add the flat black paint for the finish. So I'll show you how much I put on there. I just fill up the brush. And I'm going to go ahead and do the difficult part first, which is around the midsole. And if you have too much dye on there, just put it somewhere else and set it down there, as you don't want this to run. go ahead and just start getting close to that midsole. And you can see nothing's running up on the midsole. You just want to get as close as possible. If you don't trust your hand, or you're not steady enough, or you're pretty new, you can always just draw a line out here and just leave that. You don't have to get right up on it. But I like doing that just in case it were to crack. It won't show any black through. So I like to get as close as I possibly can. And when I'm doing really small areas, I just put barely any dye on the tip of the brush. And just go back in. Okay, now, again, when you get close to this, I usually leave it just a little bit away because it can soak into that very easily. I'm talking about that white sock liner. And so I'll just leave the dye out there, because if you get close and as soon as it touches that, it's going to grab it and soak right in. So I'll just put a little bit of dye on there. Just draw a line around. And just get, pretty close. But again, if any dye touches that, it's going to grab it and just absorb it right away. And I would say it would be hard to get out, but it's pretty much impossible to get out from that material. Okay, so now you can see that I have all of that dyed. I got as close as I could to that sock liner. Go ahead and zoom in on that. Sorry. Focus doesn't want to. Anyway, you can see it's dyed all the way around. And it looks a little glossy, which is how the leather dye is going to look, so it shouldn't be looking pretty at this time, so don't worry. Now I just have to do the other shoe. Again, I'll focus in if I can on how clean that edge is all over. We'll let this dry for about an hour just to be safe, maybe 2 hours. And then we'll come back and we'll do the matte black all over everything that we've dyed. Alright guys, now we're back and you can see that I have dyed both of the uppers. And they've been sitting overnight, so I think that's good. Again, I didn't count exactly, but it was overnight, so over 12 hours these have been drying. Just don't do it within the first couple hours. You really want to let that dye set. At this point, I just did 1 coat. You can do 2 coats. 3 coats I don't really see necessary, but you can do it if you feel like it. So we're going to just continue. And we're going to take the flat black, because that's going to leave a matte finish on the uppers. And let's see what kind of brush I have. I have a whole bunch. Some leftovers from Michael's, the craft store. I just buy whatever's on sale. Or I have a ton of these, and they're awesome. They're from turtlefeathers.net. They have you covered on everything. Shaders, spots, all that stuff. It's in there. But today we're going to be using a larger brush for coverage, obviously. I think we'll go with this. I just like the angular because I can get into small spots. It's a preference. I really should use the straight brush, but this is what I started using and liking, so we'll use that. And we're just going to go ahead and start right here. Just draw out your paint. If you put too much on your brush, that's what I do right there, is just spread it out. you want to do light coats. I know it's black and it covers quickly, but you always want to do light coats. Doesn't matter on the color. And again, just patience around those lines right there. Alright, and I'm not sure if you guys saw what I was doing there. If I can focus that. No, it's because my brightness is on. Okay, but up through that sock liner, you can see how close I got and how big of a brush I was using. I don't see any on the sock liner at all. You don't have to have, special brushes. A lot of people ask why or how actually do I avoid brush strokes. And I do it by painting. I mean, I've never had that problem when I first started. I had a little bit, but that's because I was putting on way too much paint. So maybe the people that are asking are putting on too much paint. It really doesn't have much to do with the type of brush. Like I said, I have, I don't even know how many different kinds in here. Blue, yellow, black, all different brands. I usually used to buy what was on sale or what was cheap, and then I found, the brushes at Turtle Feather, so that's what I mainly use. I think this is one of my older leftover brushes. This is a Artist Loft from Michaels and not from Turtle Feathers. But all the ones I normally use, besides the old ones I'm trying to use for big coverage like this and get rid of, I can find the Turtle Feathers and they have everything I need, but it's really not the quality of the brush that is going to leave a smooth finish. That comes from the artist and from your hand. That's just a technique you have to get down. I will say, if you buy nicer brushes, they will last longer. It's just like buying a larger name brand when you're buying a car. Like if you get a Mercedes, hopefully that should, be more well taken care of, but it should last longer than, say, maybe a Kia. And when I say a Kia, I mean like an older Kia. I know that company's grown a lot, but it should last longer. Just like buying a good airbrush. You can buy Iwata Neo, which is the entry level Iwata, and actually I found out that was made for Iwata. It's not made by Iwata. It's a Japanese brand that makes the Neo for Iwata. They are still good brushes. They will break down after some time, but if you get a high performance like a HPC or HPC Plus, Iwata is going to last longer. That's just the same as your brushes. Okay. Alright guys, so now, after I have all the dye on and I've done a few coats of paint on these, I think I am 2 coats in, maybe I think 3 coats in now at this point. Little things that will separate your custom from others is this big difference right here. The liners, I've already done this shoe here. This shoe has not been done. You can see right here all that white is gone on this one, as well as up here and around the elephant print as well. Anytime the leather meets or is sewn off, usually that underpiece is not the same color as this unless it is white. So just remember that. And then the other big thing people forget, they're also back here. And then don't forget behind the heel tabs. You can see how that links. That's leather right there. So don't forget that. The other big thing when you're using dye, I haven't got any yet, but you can see there's some on the table, is you really want to be careful where you are setting your shoes. Because if I set it down in some wet dye, it will pick it up and stain that, and it's going to be very hard, next to impossible to get off. And the other big one, I always check my hands every time I touch dye, anytime I put the paintbrush in there or the dauber, because if I were to touch anywhere in here, that's pure white. I think this has been worn once, maybe twice, and it's going to get black in that sock liner. So I'm just going to go on a video and show you guys how I do that liner. Just use an angular brush again. The brand doesn't really matter. I get mine from Turtle Feathers. And I put some dye in the cap right there. And then we'll go ahead and start on this elephant print down here. Not sure how good that angle is. So you can see that all the way around there. And you'll just continue to do that all the way around the shoe. And we'll get back to you. Alright guys, for this last segment, I wanted to do an overhead view because I know I'm going to be taking the shoe and moving it around a lot. So I want you to be able to at least see from the top what I'm doing. The last part of this, the shoe is pretty much done. As you can see, I got all the lining, and that's what we're about to go back and touch up. That lining right now just has the black leather dye in it, and sometimes it's not as full or it's not the same finish because right now we're using the flat black, so the rest of the shoe is matte. So we want to go ahead and match that all the way around. Again, this is just an extra step that a lot of people don't take, and it just kind of gives it that little pop and just little details that set you apart. So shake that up. And again, you can use any brush like I've showed you before, but if you'd like to know, right now I'm using the Lowell Cornell, the angular shader, and I believe that is a 1/4 of an inch, possibly. These are the brushes from Turtle Feathers. I doubt that's focusing, but that's the brush. And what we're going to do is we'll just start up here. Just dab into some paint. And just follow that edge. Just like we did with the dye. This time it's just with paint to get that finish even. Alright, and don't forget about this back part right here around the heel, like we said earlier, and then also behind the heel tab, we want to hit that liner too, just for uniformity. Alright guys, and here we have the final results.